Deadlock has multiple new abilities which will be added into the game. I'm going to be showing you the tips you need to know, ranging from how long her Gravnet stun lasts, all the way up to the crazy tips which break the game and even got the Riot staff laughing.
Last player standing.
That's so cool.
So make sure to stick around till the end to see all of that. Also, I'm streaming Deadlock on Twitch, so if you have any questions, come pop in and I'll answer them live for you whilst playing the new agent. Alright, let's get into the tips. Number 1, Deadlock's grenade ability is called Gravnet. It makes the enemy player stuck in a crouch walk until they either pull out the stun by holding F or by waiting until the timer runs out on the ability, which is 6 seconds. Number 2, Deadlock's Q ability, also known as Sonic Sensor, stuns the enemy like a breach stun. This will keep the enemy stunned for 4 seconds and will only be activated if the footsteps or gunshots are heard when the enemy is next to the trap. Number 3, Barrier Mesh is Deadlock's ability which stops enemies passing through. Unless the enemy breaks the wall will be up for 30 seconds and is an absolute nightmare to get rid of. Which brings me onto my next tip. Number 4, we just mentioned Deadlock's wall ability lasts 30 seconds, but it's also incredibly hard to break. I'm not sure about the exact amount of HP that it has, but it comes in incredibly useful to slow down pushes, especially on pistol rounds. Here's a great example of where to place the barrier mesh on Haven to stop enemies retaking C site in an afterplant.
How strong is it?
There's a sheriff behind you.
Number 5, Deadlock's Gravnet is fantastic for retakes or pushing sides. However, it would also work incredibly well to stop enemies pushing onto sites. If you know the timing of when an enemy is going to push in, one Gravnet nade will stop the whole push and allow your teammates to get easy picks. Number 6, an advanced version of this trick would be to create lineups for her Gravnet. For example, if you were on A site on Ascent and your teammates called that the enemy is pushing into B site, you could use a lineup to throw Gravnet from A to B lane, which would slow down the enemy push entirely and allow your teammates to get all of the kills. Or at least make it a lot easier for them to get the kills. Number 7, Deadlock's Sonic Sensor is not only designed to be placed on walls. Sonic Sensor can be placed on any angled surface, even the stairs on Ascent B lane. So get creative with where you're putting your unexpected traps. Number 8, sometimes breaking the barrier mesh may take too long or is just too inconvenient. If you're a Sage main like myself, then you can use the Sage wall to boost up and over the barrier mesh. Just be aware that you do have to do a little jump to get over the very top of it. Number 9, Deadlock's ult needs 7 points until it's ready to be used. As it's almost a guaranteed kill every time when you capture an enemy, make sure you're farming the ult orbs, perhaps prioritizing Deadlock's ultimate over other agents such as Raze, which also have a guaranteed kill almost every time with their ultimate. Valorant is all about getting as many rounds as possible, so farm those ults and let your team know when you have the ult ready. Number 10, leading on from number 9, Deadlock's ult is incredibly good for getting kills. Just make sure you're actually able to capture the enemy with it. The number 10 tip is that her ult takes a second before it activates onto the enemy. So if you're within too close of a range, the enemy is able to jump out of the line of the sight of the ult just before it captures them. Make sure that you're not wasting your ults this way and you're always able to capture the enemy and guarantee a kill with it. Number 11, Deadlock's ult is fantastic for getting kills, but it can also be used to bait out the enemy. Experiment with capturing an enemy and then waiting for their teammate to peek out and try to save them. Watch this example as I narrow it down to a 1v1 and bait out Jonas to destroy the ult before Mixwell gets fully killed by it.
Last player standing. One enemy remaining.
That's the clip.
Number 12. Pairing utility in Valorant is a fantastic way of securing kills. For an easy kill using Deadlock's Gravnet, make sure to pair it with a Raze nade or a molly of some sorts. You can see here how this strategy was used very effectively against me.
I'm getting raped! I'm getting raped! What just happened?
Number 13. Deadlock's barrier mesh is not only to stop the enemy from rushing into a site, it can also be used in a clever way to stop the enemy from defusing the spike. Simply place the wall slightly away from the spike and watch as the enemy are unable to get close enough to defuse it.
Wow, that wall is strong, man.
Number 14. Number 14 is an addition to the previous tip. Although using the barrier mesh to stop an enemy defusing is great, you have to make sure that it's placed far enough away from the spike. Otherwise, the enemy will still be able to defuse the spike even through the wall, just like I did here. Number 15. I've spoken a lot about stopping the enemies with Deadlock's barrier mesh, but here's a really fun trick you can also do. If you know an enemy is holding a certain angle, you can throw the barrier mesh so that they end up being trapped within the walls of it. Their only way of escape would be to break the wall and get out.
That's actually insane.
It's the same trick as trapping my enemies behind the Sage walls video, so if you want a better understanding of how to do this, just check out that video. Number 16. Another barrier mesh tip, which is the same trick that I used on Sage already. You can drop the wall on top of the spike so that the Omen can't TP onto it to take the spike to the other side. Again, I've made a video on this already with the Sage wall and it works incredibly well. And I've already tested it with Deadlock as well, it worked brilliantly. Number 17. Deadlock has a cool feature on her ult which allows it to be bounced off of objects. This means that you can create lineups so that when the enemy gets onto the spike to defuse the spike, you can bounce her ult off of a wall and guarantee a kill onto the last man standing and easily win the round. Number 18. Leading on from the last tip, since you can bounce her ult off of objects, this also means that you can hang your enemies. Sometimes even when you capture an enemy in Deadlock's cocoon, they may not have a clear line of sight to the end of the rope, or their teammate may break them free. A guaranteed way of getting a kill every single time is to bounce Deadlock's ult off of a ceiling high enough so that even if the enemy is released, they will simply die from the fall damage taken. This is a very fun and creative trick which you can try out for yourself. Number 19. Another way of getting a guaranteed kill is if the enemy is taking the zipline on Fracture and you capture them with your ult. With the way that the zipline works, the enemy won't be able to make it to the end of the ult and will instead fall off the zipline and into their death. The Riot devs really found this one hilarious when myself and Noodle discovered it.
I have them now. Last player standing.
That's so cool.
Number 20. The very last trick, and an absolutely hilarious one, is of course a game-breaking trick you can pull off. Since both myself and Noodle got to playtest Deadlock, of course we were going to find a way to completely break her. I mentioned in the last two tips that enemies can die from fall damage, and can also fall into the void of the zipline. However, there is one agent this tip doesn't work on. Jet, of course. If Jet is captured in the cocoon whilst on the zipline, she can immediately begin her glide after coming out of it. From here, you can use 2 updrafts to get outside of the map on Fracture. I know this is a super silly trick and very unrealistic in a real competitive match, but it was just way too hilarious not to share. So if you want to, be sure to try this one out with your friends. That's all of the tips that I have for you today. As I said, I will be playtesting Deadlock more on my stream where I'm sure I'll use these tricks and come up with more game-breaking ideas with Noodle, so be sure to stop on by. I'll leave a link in the description and the comment section to my Twitch channel. I hope all of you found this video helpful and now have a further understanding of Deadlock's abilities and how they can be used effectively in-game to ensure you're able to win more games with her. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and I'll see you very soon with more creative content.